Hello friends, I am Dr. Sujata Vishwakarma, Assistant Professor, Department of Management, School of Management Sciences, Lucknow. Welcome you all to the today's session of Supply Chain and Logistics Management. The topic of discussion today is Demand Chain Management. Students, in this particular unit and in this particular subject, we have talked a lot about supply chain performances. We have also discussed about what is a supply chain in previous units, and we had understood the basic concepts of supply chain. Now, over here I would like to share with you that traditionally the supply chain concept used to be focused on, or used the aim of supply chain used to be on push strategy. Now, what do I mean by push strategy? That means the companies believed that they should be producing the products, the desired amount of products, as per the sales forecast or as per the demand forecast that they have done. That means the company is used to, for example, if I am a producer and I am producing, let us say, a mobile set, then probably my perception used to be that I should based on the previous trends, based on the past year sales, I should be able to forecast the sales, forecast the demand for the next year, and then I should procure the raw materials as per my forecast, and I should have the supply chain network based on the demand that I have forecasted. But now, with the lot of evolution coming up of new concepts, this concept of supply chain based on push concept has now broken down, and now a new concept has evolved, and that is called demand chain management. This concept of supply chain basically focuses on pull strategy rather than push strategy. Now, over here, before explaining you about the demand chain management, I would also like to tell you that what is pull chain or pull strategy. Pull strategy is one in which we are preparing the product or producing the good according to the customer and when they are ordering. That means we are delaying the production till the time the customer has actually ordered. That means we are first focusing on attracting the customer towards our product. If they have got attracted, if they have ordered, then probably we will produce. Now, what is the benefit of doing so? The benefit is that the company will be able to reduce on lot of cost in terms of warehousing cost, in terms of cost of obsolescence, in terms of damages due to keeping up of their products in warehouse or distributing them, and then would also be able to save save because of the non-sales or non-distribution of the product. So, this is what we are going to understand, that what demand chain management is all about and what are the benefits. So, let us get started. So, demand chain management is a natural next step in the evolution of supply chain management concept, based on the necessity for adaptation to changing external and internal conditions and availability of new tools. Now, why necessity for adaptation to changing external and internal conditions? This is something very important, because of which the demand chain management evolved. Now, pestle factors you all have already studied about. So, pestle factors are very dynamic. Pestle factor basically are political, economic, socio-cultural, ecological and legal factors. These are very dynamic. And because of lot of dynamicity, what happens that if any company is producing any good and there is a change in regulation, government regulation, or change in technology, a new technology has come up, or change in the customer preferences, then the product that I have manufactured may get obsolete or may get wasted, and the total cost that I have incurred in that particular production will go in vain, and the product will not be able to be sold. So, this will actually lead to losses to the company. So, none of the company actually wants to enter into such deliberate losses. So, the companies basically with their experiences with the evolution of new technologies started focusing on delaying the production process. That means they started focusing that they will not try to get trapped into this dynamicity of external and internal conditions, and they will wait till the time the customer is actually ordering. When they are ordering, the amount of which the amount that they are that is demanded by them, the company started focusing that they should be preparing the product only in that quantity, that and as per their requirements. This will not only reduce the cost, but will also help them minimize various kinds of risk too. So, this is what is called the demand chain management. Demand chain management is a new tool in the hands of management that deals with all assets, information, processes to define demand, followed by synchronization of various activities to fulfill the demand on a real time basis by managing flow of information and products efficiently and effectively. Now, over here you can see that as the demand rises from the customer end, then the company is nowadays in as per the demand chain management, when the demand gets raised by the customer, then the companies are required to manage all the assets, information and process in order to fulfill that particular demand. That means, when the customer has demanded, now I will send the requisition for the procurement of raw material. From then obviously the complete conversion process will start, and from then obviously the and after conversion, then the product has to be delivered to the customer. So, over here there are certain challenges also, that also we will be discussing, but let us go in more detail and understand the difference between demand chain management and supply chain management. As discussed earlier also, the supply chain management aims to optimize the flow. That means, all the organizations, people, activities and process that are participating in supply chain process are basically involved to improve their specific purposes. They are supposed to cooperate with each other for the benefit of all and achieve a optimal end-to-end process optimization. While in case of demand chain management, it is a more complex and process in which there is a requirement of upstream and downstream relationship between suppliers in order to identify the customer's need and deliver the lowest cost and the best value to the customer across the supply chain process. So, according to DCM, that is demand chain management, companies need complete, accurate, proactive visibility into customers' changing demand. Now, let us talk about the components of DCM, that is demand chain management. As you can see that the demand chain management involves three things or has three components. The first being managing the integration between demand and supply process. That means that the company is first required to understand the demand and integrate it with the supply process, because unless and until we know, as I discussed earlier, that unless and until we know that what is the actual demand rather than the forecasted demand, and then if we know the actual demand, then obviously I will have to integrate all the procurement process and other processes, that means the complete supply process. The second component is integration of the structures between processes and customer segment. Over here we need to understand that every company is basically offering their products to certain target market. Every company must understand that what is the target market, what is the buying frequency, what are the preferences of the customer, and if the customer preferences do change very quickly, then the company should also be able to change the product offering that at the same pace. If the customer segment is not very much price sensitive or is not very sensitive with the preferences, then probably I can continue offering the same kind of product to a larger segment. So, that means a company needs to understand that the structure of the supply chain is dependent on the customer demand. It should not be based on the company's available resources. It should be based, and it should be in such a manner, designed in such a manner that an organization can change the structure according to the changing preferences of the customer, changing demand of the customer. That means, if the customer has demanded the products in a higher quantities, in a bigger quantities, I should have the capacity to increase my production after that. And if in case the customer is has demanded the products in a small quantity, then I should be also able to optimally utilize the resources, and should have ways where I can use the same machinery assembly line for producing some other kind of products, so that my assets are not underutilized. And the third component being that managing the working relationship between marketing and between the marketing and supply chain management. Because in an organization, all the activities are interrelated, and we had already discussed in the value chain model, which is given by Michael Porter. We had discussed that there are various set of activities which are there in a supply chain process, and all these interrelated or interlinked activities actually add the value to the customer. Now, there is an importance that the company should be able to establish a proper relationship between the marketing and supply chain management, because whatever what all the supply chain is actually producing, and the way they are trying to leverage on the cost and value, the same should be properly communicated also by the marketing team to the customer, so that they can understand the importance of the supply chain. Now, moving ahead, who gets impacted by demand chain management? So, over here, as the first statement only, over here you can see, typically everyone along the procurement, distribution and payment continuum gets affected by or impacted by DCM. That means that all the stakeholders who are directly or indirectly related to the product or the organization are affected by the demand chain management. So, ideally over here you can see, ideally the impact is positive for all the parties, and these positive impacts includes greater understanding of organization need. All the partners of the organization will be able to understand the objective and the goals of the organization, and so will be able to work in alignment, and will be able to offer their service also in the alignment. Next, better process for user, buyer and suppliers. If the partners are able to understand that what the company is trying to achieve, and why they are focusing on demand rather, that means the pull rather than push, then probably they will be able to provide better process and proper services to not only the end term customer, but the buyer, that means the manufacturer or even the supplier. The warehouse, distribution and logistics tasks will also be able to perform to their optimum level and with a more efficiency, if they are able to understand the logic behind the demand chain management. Now, the accounts payable staff will also be benefited in terms that they will be able to understand that for what and how what particular activity they have to do the or issue the money or the funds, and what is the essence of that particular activity to the end customer or even to the entire process. Improved communication will also get enhanced and improved, because because as the demand will get raised, then the company will be supposed to communicate to all the partners for telling about their roles and activities, and so there is a scope of improving communication also. And improved responsiveness, that means the organization will be required to change their or be responsive to the changing needs of the customer. Now, few important aspects of DCM. Over here we need to understand that there is a difference between forecasting demand and trying to understand the forecasting demand and what actual demand is. Over here companies need to understand that for the forecast that we have done on the previous years or historic data is not a symbolism of replication of the same kind of sales or same kind of demand in the next year too. And so companies need to understand that what is the actual demand, what kind of actual demand is actually exists. So over here companies need to understand that this variation in the forecast and the actual demand is basically because of a factor which is called out of stock situation. Now what is out of stock situation? It basically means that, for example, if I have there was some certain promotional campaign run by any particular company, and if I have gone to a retail outlet to avail the benefit of that promotional campaign, and when I went there I realized that the product which was under promotions is not available. So what will I do? I will have two options. One, I will opt for any other product which may or may not have the promotional offer, or the second option that I am left with is that I will wait for the product to come, or maybe I will go to any other retail shop from where I can avail that particular offer. Now if this particular retail organization is expected or is required to calculate the forecast, then probably what will happen that they will not count me if I have not made a purchase in their next next forecast. So what will happen? This will lead to false calculation of demand, because actually the product was demanded by me, but I could not get, and that was the reason that I am not being counted. So that actually means that according to studies, out of stock rate normally stands to approximately 8%, but in case of sales promotion situations, the out of stock rate exists up to 30%. So Kosten and Gruen described key factors for lowering OOS, that is out of stock rates, and improving DCM. So Kosten and Gruen said that it is very important to first reduce these out of stock rates, because then only the company will be able to know the actual demand, and for that they gave certain factors for it, and the factors includes data accuracy, forecast and order accuracy, order quantity, replenishment, capacity timing, in-store capacity planning, and planogram compliance, and self-replenishment. Now, what is meant by data accuracy, forecast and order accuracy, order quantity? It basically means that when we are actually trying to calculate the forecast of the demand, then we need to take the accurate data, and probably wrong recording or wrong misrepresentation should be avoided. Forecasting and order accuracy. All the orders should be properly recorded and taken in consideration. Every time what is the quantity of order that the company, the retail shop has made, should be taken into consideration. Replenishment should also be taken, that means every time they are getting the orders refilled, because they have already sold the quantity that was available with them. So replenishment is also something that they need to consider. Capacity, whether the manufacturer is sending the order, the desired amount of quantities in the right time or not, that also should be taken in consideration. Capacity planning and planogram compliance. Planogram is basically the visual representation of store. That means if the products are placed properly, then probably there is a higher chance of products to be sold. So if the capacity planning is not done properly and planogram compliance is not done properly, then there may be a chance that the customer has not seen or is not, the product is not visually available to the customer, and that is why the demand has not raised. And self replenishment, that means the company should also focus on adopting practices through which they are able to inform the manufacturer about the amount of inventories which are available on the shelf, so that they can replenish the product before it is actually stocked out. So, if a company is actually able to practice on all these aspects, then obviously they will be able to reduce the chance of out of stock situation, and obviously will be helpful for improving the demand chain management. Over here, students, we also need to understand that how a company can basically gain advantage through DCM or demand chain management. So, company must focus on alignment, agility and adaptability. Alignment means that the company should be sharing incentives or sharing responsibilities or accountability to all the partners of partners who are participating in the supply chain, so that all of them are working in collaboration for a mutual benefit and towards the achievement of one common objective, that is satisfaction of customer. They should not have individual objectives, because individual objectives will lead to non-fulfillment of the common objective, which is customer satisfaction. Agility, it basically talks about responding to quickly responding to the short term changes or change in preferences of the customer. That means the company should be quite agile, because the external factors, the internal factors, the micro factors are very dynamic, and so in all such situations the company should be able to be able to respond quickly and offer products and services accordingly. And the last is adaptability, which basically means that the company should be able to design the network the supply chain network in a manner that they are able to change the network network and change the process or the activities, or reduce or increase the activities or process as per the demands raised by the customer. Now, there are certain misconceptions also related to DCM, which companies usually have, and the company should try to avoid and should try to gather informations which can help them come out of these misconceptions. The misconceptions are that the companies think that they are demand driven if they adopt good forecasting practices or techniques. This is not so, because demand is something which is raised by the customer, while forecasting is just an expectation that we have that this may happen. So, something which may happen, something which has happened are two different aspects. So, this is not absolutely correct. Now, having implemented lean manufacturing is a concept where companies try to focus, try to implement various process or actions through which they can reduce their cost and do a rather incorporate small improvement methods every time on a regular basis. That means they are on a mode of continuous improvement. So, if a company is actually following the concept of lean manufacturing, that means trying to lower their cost also and doing a continuous improvement, that does not replicate to the concepts of DCM. Now, have data management of their customers is also one misconception. That means if a company has a particular database of the customer, that may help in development of customer relationship management, but that would not help in demand chain management. And DCM is a technology project, and the corporate forecast is a demand visibility signal. So, DCM is basically a tool which is basically very much dependent on demand as well as technology, because unless and until we are technologically advanced, we will not be able to adopt practices that are required by required for implementing DCM in terms of communication with the partners, in terms of communication with the customers, in terms of effective transport management system, in terms of effective winter management system, or having good relationship with the different partners. So, all of them are very very important, and so DCM is a technology product and not a demand of visual signal. For more details, you can go to these references and check for details. Thank you.